Tonight, the Israel Defense Forces fights on multiple fronts. Plus,
we win the whole thing.
Election 2024.
Even a felony conviction doesn't seem to have changed Americans' opinions of former President Donald Trump.
The latest from the campaign trail. And recreational drones are popping up on Capitol Hill's radar.
Since I've been up here, I've been saying our federal government has got to stop buying Chinese-made drones.
The security threat they just may pose. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. A major decision by the Supreme Court today, rejecting a bid to restrict access to the abortion pill. Welcome to Faith Nation from the CBN headquarters in Virginia Beach. I'm Charlene Aaron. It is considered the most important case since the decision to end Roe v. Wade. The Supreme Court ruling unanimously today to protect access to medication commonly used for at-home abortions. Tonight, we break down the court's decision and what people had to say about it. CBN's Tara Mergener is there outside the High Court tonight with reaction. But first, we begin with Lori Johnson, who has followed this case from the beginning. Lori, what does this case mean for the pro-life movement?
Well, a lot of anti-abortionists are disappointed, but they are vowing to continue the fight. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled against a group of pro-life doctors who wanted the court to restrict access to the so-called abortion pill. While today's ruling was a defeat, pro-life groups are vowing to continue the fight. All 9 justices ruled against a group of pro-life doctors on what many are calling a technicality. Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who authored the opinion, wrote, "Under Article 3 of the Constitution, a plaintiff's desire to make a drug less available for others does not establish standing to sue." The doctor group called for restricted access to the abortion drug mifepristone because of the alleged danger it poses to women after the FDA lifted mandatory in-person doctor visits. In lacking standing, the justices believe the doctors don't have the right to bring the case because they're not directly affected. Here, the plaintiffs have failed to demonstrate the FDA's relaxed regulatory requirements likely would cause them to suffer an injury, in fact. For that reason, the federal courts are the wrong forum for addressing the plaintiffs' concerns about FDA's actions. Alliance Defending Freedom's Aaron Hawley represented the doctor group and points out the justices were silent on the facts of the case.
They did not address the merits. Again, if we're talking about FDA's own documents, those documents show that 1 in 25 women will end up in the emergency room because of these drugs, or I should say roughly 1 in 25 women.
She said although this battle is lost, the war is not over.
The Supreme Court did not dismiss this lawsuit, and that is because there are 3 states that have intervened in the district court below. Those states will presumably, consider their alternatives, but I would expect the litigation to continue with those states raising different standing sort of arguments than made by our doctors.
Those states are Idaho, Kansas, and Missouri. Indeed, even the justices suggested other avenues in the opinion, saying the plaintiffs may present their concerns and objections to the president and FDA in the regulatory process or to Congress and the president in the legislative process. And they may also express their views about abortion and mifepristone to fellow citizens, including in the political and electoral processes. Now, we know abortion is an important issue in the presidential race this year. The Biden campaign put out a statement saying today's ruling isn't enough to protect abortion medication if Trump is elected. No reaction from the Trump campaign as of now. Charlene.
Thank you so much, Lori. Well, more than 60% of Americans favored keeping the abortion pill access in place. On news of today's opinion, some people gathered outside the court. And that's where we find Tara Mergener tonight. Tara, what were you hearing from people out there?
Well, Charlene, unlike Roe v. Wade, there was actually not much presence from either side for this ruling this morning, but there is strong reaction tonight. Now, obviously, pro-lifers are very disappointed in this ruling, saying this is another indication of the high stakes of this election and how high they are for unborn children and their mothers. They say they'll continue to help women face unplanned pregnancies. Now, one man who was in front of the High Court for the Roe v. Wade ruling and this one as well says this decision hurts momentum for the pro-life movement, and he's calling on the church to unite for the sake of the unborn.
I think something like this obviously discourages many folks to see something that's probably going to even make it more easily accessible. But I think it takes the church to step up, people in the church to not be silent, and to kind of arise to the occasion to see something shift in our nation.
But no matter the outcome today, no one expected this fight to let up, Charlene.
Well, this is obviously a divisive issue. What have you heard from the other side?
Right. Well, again, this is certainly a victory for the pro-abortion movement, but they say this case should have never made it to the Supreme Court, and they say it was a near miss for science and the medical community today.
I have a uterus. My daughter-in-law has a uterus. My sons are married. They would like to control their own lives. How they build their families is their choice. It should be their choice and not the choice of someone else. I'm also old enough that I remember the stories of the women who died because they used a pencil, the women who died because they couldn't access abortion, and so they died on the table.
Now, meanwhile, at a House Republican committee meeting today, Donald Trump reportedly told members not to be afraid of the abortion issue, but not to go too far either, advocating, Charlene, for some exceptions.
Thank you so much, Tara, for your reporting. And here with us now is Kelsey Pritchard, State Public Affairs Director with the Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America. Kelsey, did the justices make the right choice here?
You know, it's a sad day for women's health in this country and for the lives of unborn children. But the fight isn't over. The Supreme Court brought an end to the doctor's challenge to the FDA's policy of allowing mail-order abortion drugs. But we know that the pro-life states of Idaho, Kansas, and Missouri are seeking to take up the challenge on harms that are suffered by women in their states. So unfortunately, the mail order of abortion drugs, of dangerous abortion drugs, is going to continue in this country for now. And that puts women at risk, and it puts unborn children at risk, obviously, as well. And we know these drugs are dangerous. We know they can lead to hemorrhaging, the need for emergency surgery, even death in some situations for women. And of course, almost always death to the unborn child. And to remove the doctor completely from the picture is just irresponsible and not pro-women whatsoever. And so we look forward to pro-life states continuing to fight this fight.
So, Kelsey, do you think someone else who does have standing could bring the case and win?
We're hopeful that we could eventually be victorious in this. The lower courts initially found that the government likely broke the law when it loosened its criteria surrounding this. So we are very hopeful. We need people to understand across this country that this really opens up the new form of domestic violence in relation to abortion drugs. We know that coercers and abusers are getting a hold of these drugs through apps that, the Planned Parenthood organization is bragging they have an app where a doctor can just can tap their phone a couple of times and anyone can get access to these drugs. And we've heard terrible, horrifying stories of men who have poisoned women with these drugs unknowingly. And also, we know that 60% of women who have had an abortion report some sort of pressure, and a common source of pressure is an abusive boyfriend coercing a woman, pressuring her to take these abortion drugs when she wants to keep her baby. And so, unfortunately, these drugs are getting into the wrong hands, and women are taking them either unknowingly or against their will.
Well, Kelsey, we do know abortion is a key issue for many voters this election year. Does today's opinion help or hurt the pro-life fight come November?
It increases the stakes of the November election with Joe Biden up for re-election and Democrats running and saying that this isn't even enough for them. So I don't know what is enough. We know that they won't draw any limit when it comes to the issue of abortion, that they think that we should have all trimester abortion in every state. And we know they're going to ban pro-life laws all across this nation if they come to power. So it's incredibly important. It's also incredibly important that we defeat Joe Biden and elect Donald Trump so that he can roll back these irresponsible mail order rules from the FDA. And so it's more of a reason for us to get out and vote.
Absolutely.
And, also more of a reason for us to let people know about the pro-life safety net that's out there to help women with unplanned pregnancies.
Thank you so much. We know you guys are working ahead of this election. Thank you so much, Kelsey Pritchett, for your insights.
Thank you, Charlene.
Well, in the Middle East tonight, Israel is fighting on two fronts, the north and the south. The IDF pounded Hezbollah deep inside Lebanon in response to hundreds of rockets fired by the terror group. The escalating violence is raising fears of a bigger war. All the while, the IDF is advancing farther into Rafah tonight as ceasefire negotiations stall. The U.S. says Israel backs the deal, but Hamas is still refusing to accept it. Meanwhile, support for Ukraine is topping the agenda of the G7 summit, which is officially underway in Italy. President Biden is signing a bilateral security agreement with Ukraine's President Zelensky. The 10-year deal pledges U.S. support for Ukraine's military, but it does not commit American troops to its defense. The U.S. is also widening economic sanctions against Moscow. This comes after Russian warships arrived in Cuba yesterday. The move is seen as a warning to the West. Russia says there are no nuclear weapons on the ships. Coming up, Trump returns to Washington. We bring you the latest on the race for the White House right after this. Welcome back. Donald Trump returned to Capitol Hill today for the first time since the January 6th Capitol riot. He met with GOP lawmakers and business leaders behind closed doors, aiming to rally support for his re-election bid. Meanwhile, First Lady Jill Biden is on the campaign trail this week, touring Wisconsin, Minnesota, California, Nevada, and Arizona. And with just 5 months to go until Election Day, a new Reuters Ipsos poll shows Trump with a 2-point lead over President Biden. And with that, let's bring in CBN Chief Political Analyst David Brody. David, this is Trump's first time on Capitol Hill since he left the White House. What message is Trump sending by meeting with lawmakers today? What's his strategy?
Well, it's really strategy and PR. It's both. And what the PR here is that it's all about unity. They want to show unity, whether it be at the press conference they had this afternoon with President Trump and Republican leaders behind him. You know, the old, we're all on board. Let's all do this together. Everybody loves President Trump. Okay, yada, yada, yada. This is somewhat of a ritual that not just Republicans, but Democrats would have done in the same situation as it relates to if they were running against an incumbent president. So this is what he did on Capitol Hill today. Yeah, part of it's about laying out the agenda, but the truth of the matter is this is a unity front they wanted to show to America, in essence.
Absolutely. Well, the fight over abortion is far from over, as we saw in today's Supreme Court decision. And Trump has been pretty cautious about sharing his stance on abortion. Does he risk alienating his pro-life supporters by taking this approach?
I mean, there's a chance of that, at the margins, Charlene. Look, I think here's the reality. We know that he has been president before. We know that, as his supporters like to call him, the most pro-life president ever. I mean, he has delivered on the life issue with action. So I think they feel comfortable with that, even if he's playing, let's be honest, the political abortion politics game right now. They understand that he has a track record and a very good one. So I think they're willing to understand what he's trying to do here, which is to appeal to more moderates to get everybody on board so he can win a second term. Well,
about 20% of voters, David, say they haven't picked a candidate yet, want a third party, some say, or maybe even not vote at all. So what should President Trump and Biden do to win these people over?
Well, I think it's pretty clear what their playbook has been on both sides. They want to paint the other one as, in essence, really evil. And so that to win the voters that are still undecided, who's more evil? Oh, that's a great game to play. Boy, that's an optimistic message. But in essence, that's what Biden is said about Trump, that, look, you might not like me, but I'm far better than Trump. And Trump's like, this country is going to you-know-what in a handbasket, so you can't vote for Biden. So it's really been a bunch of negative, evil campaigning, if you will, and that's where we're at, Charlene.
Just real quickly, we see that Trump's conviction has not swayed voters much. How do you think Hunter Biden's legal issues could impact the president's reelection campaign?
Not at all. Bottom line is Joe Biden's had ethics problems in the polls, so
Gotcha.
I don't think that's going to change at all.
David Brody, thank you so much.
You bet.
All right. Well, up next, drones over the nation's capital. Experts sound the alarm over this growing threat from China. Welcome back. American lawmakers are pushing new legislation to ban Chinese-made drones from entering the U.S., but they may already be a step behind. According to a new report from The Hill, China's biggest drone companies are working to keep their technology on the American market, even if Congress bans them. They have started partnering with American companies to license their technology. Chinese drones are much cheaper than their U.S. competitors, but security experts are concerned about their links to China's Communist Party. And the concern is clear, the potential for China to spy on Americans by way of the sky. It was a conversation that came to the forefront when that Chinese balloon was brought down off the coast of South Carolina recently, and one that's continued due to drones. Matt Galka brings us a look at these possible threats buzzing around restricted airspace over Washington, D.C.
Recreational drones have been creating a growing buzz for years. The ability to provide stunning views and unique perspectives has driven the drone market to $1 billion industry in the United States. This soaring popularity has also put these flying machines on Capitol Hill's radar, especially given tensions with China. The world's largest recreational drone maker is Chinese-owned company DJI, and alarm bells ring as drones keep popping up around Washington, D.C. Here's why.
If you look behind me, there is no Capitol, there are no monuments, there's no D.C. And that's because there's not supposed to be. Washington, D.C. has some of the strictest drone laws in the country. And at minimum, drones are supposed to be at least 15 miles away. That's why we're in Fairfax County, Virginia.
This FAA map shows the no-fly zones around the nation's capital. The red ring shows a strict no-fly zone covering a 15-mile radius around D.C. The outer ring allows for drone flights with altitude and other restrictions. Most drones come equipped with internal GPS that automatically limits the ability to fly in restricted areas. But that hasn't stopped increasing flybys. This report from Politico details classified briefings presented to Senate committees about hundreds of drones detected around the Capitol. Homeland Security warned last summer about the potential for foreign adversaries to hack drones for spying or cyber attacks.
What we know is that the threat posed by UAS is widespread across the country, and it is critical that our partners have the authority to help protect the homeland.
Homeland Security Committee member Senator Rick Scott attended that hearing.
Let's wake up. I mean, since I've been up here, I've been saying our federal government has got to stop buying Chinese-made drones. These are just can be used for surveillance, and they are, as far as we know. So our government shouldn't be buying them. Our military shouldn't be buying them.
Senator Scott has introduced multiple bills to curb the use of foreign-made, specifically China-made, drones in government. The encounters in restricted airspace means someone hacked or manipulated the drones to bypass the geofencing. Whether malicious or not, it poses a problem.
And I think the way to think about it, what can you do? You can make sure you don't buy Chinese products. You don't use TikTok. You can make sure that you never buy a Chinese drone.
Regarding the restricted airspace encounters, DJI told Politico, quote, "Unfortunately, while DJI puts everything in place to identify and notify our customers about areas in which they can't fly, we can't control the end user's behavior." Fear over spying and data collection by China has only heightened in recent weeks. A new House Select Committee on China will now focus on threats and competition from the Asian superpower. More lawmakers want TikTok banned or to force the popular app to be sold to an American company due to potential spying threats. And the flyby and eventual takedown of a Chinese spy balloon after it sailed over America has only turned up the heat. South Dakota Congressman Dusty Johnson sits on the new China Select Committee.
So whether we're talking drone technology, whether we're talking wireless technology, whether we're talking apps that big tech is rolling out in coordination with CCP, we do need to be a lot more thoughtful, planful, and deliberate in how we deal with this threat. We know that China is a technological leader in drones, and they don't have to be, it's not just weather balloons that are spying on Americans. I suspect drones are doing a fair amount of the activity as well.
The good news in this divided Congress, a crackdown on the spying threat appears to have bipartisan support. California Democrat Ro Khanna also sits on the new Select Committee.
Do you feel like drones will come up also when we're talking about apps that the Chinese government may or may not have access to?
Absolutely. We need to, first of all, have our capability on drones, on AI, on satellite imaging, on quantum really enhanced. And one of the challenges is that a lot of this is now commercial technology, not DoD technology. So we need to adopt that commercial technology better. But we also need to be careful about the commercial technology that China has.
At least part of the investments backing DJI come from the Chinese government. The links have led to multiple government agencies here, including the Pentagon and the Department of Defense, to ban buying the drones for their agencies, except in limited circumstances. But another potential problem, the drones are used by local law enforcement across the country, as the machines are increasingly used to help first responders. Matt Gelka, CBN News.
Coming up, a GOP victory on the baseball diamond. That's next on Faith Nation. Finally tonight, a D.C. tradition that trades party politics for hits and runs. Members of Congress took to the field at Nationals Park in Washington, D.C. Wednesday night for the annual congressional baseball game. The game raises money for local charities in the D.C. area, and last night's event drew in 30,000 fans, and get this, more than $2 million in donations. Republicans defeated their Democratic colleagues 31-11, the GOP continuing their winning streak since 2021. And that's going to do it for Faith Nation. See you tomorrow.